With American lives and treasure on the line, I want to bring in Charlie Sykes, author of the Substack newsletter To the Contrary. Evelyn Farkas is a former senior advisor to the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia and Ukraine. She's also executive director of the McCain Institute. Priya Sridhar is covering the latest on the war from Washington, and Peter Baker is chief White House correspondent from the New York Times. Peter, according to the Times' reporting, not only did the president get pushback from General Cain, but it says few, if any, in Mr. Trump's inner circle believed the plan to escalate was wise. So this appears to be a situation in which the president actually listened to his advisors. Is that your understanding, and what does it tell you about where his head is?
He did, but that's just for now. I mean, what we've seen entirely again and again and again is he changes his mind. He gets an impulse one way or the other. He threatens great destruction 1 minute, says they're minutes away from a deal the next. And I think that the challenge, of course, is trying to figure out what is in his head, because, in fact, it doesn't seem to be a consistent, coherent strategy going forward. The strategy has been to try to bomb Iran into making concessions at the negotiating table, but 40 days of pretty severe bombardment at the beginning of this war, starting in the end of February, didn't change Iran's calculus when it came to that. So the question is, what would do that now? Is there an economic lever to use? Is there a military strategy here that would alter their appreciation of what the situation is like and what they can agree to or would agree to in a negotiation? That doesn't seem to be there. And I think this is what's left the president in kind of a quandary, because he doesn't have an obvious military option ahead of him. He doesn't really seem to have an obvious negotiating strategy at this point, and he seemed to be looking for some way out.
Charlie, I read one analysis that called this the definition of a no-win situation for the president.
Well, he's stuck, and Donald Trump believes that his superpower is that he can spin anything. But I think he's reached the limits of his spin and his BS. But also, I think it's very telling that he's stopped bombing, although he is now spending his time on AI slop. Now, who is that meant for? Is that meant to intimidate the Iranians if they actually see one of his AI images of the invasion of Kargan? Or is that sort of self-soothing by the part of the president, that at a moment when his weakness has been exposed, he's creating these images that convinces himself and his core supporters that, in fact, he is waging this all-out war, the all-out war that he is not waging. But again, this is one of those stories that he's not able to spin as a success, and it is not clear that he's got an exit strategy. This is a president who is stuck in a war of his own making.
Right. And on top of that, Priya, it is not clear what this president does and does not know, specifically when it comes to this question of munitions, because I just read you that statement from the White House. It seems to be cleanup on aisle 6 from what we heard from Ambassador Walls, who essentially acknowledged this weekend that there was some kind of shortage of munitions, but then says it's not the administration's fault. Take a listen.
A lot of stockpiles were depleted, not only from what we gave Ukraine over the last however many years, 4 or 5 years, and the administration inherited, the Secretary Hegseth inherited a depleted situation from not only Ukraine, but also the ongoing fight with the Houthis under the Biden administration and a depleted military under the Biden administration.
But you acknowledge they're depleted?
I want to be clear.
Do you acknowledge they're depleted, at this moment?
I want to be crystal clear. The U.S. military, and I've verified this every which way, has everything that it needs to conduct this campaign as effectively as it needs to be. And I have to tell you, the people that are leaking this nonsense deserve to be in jail.
Priya, do they? Do they have everything they need?
Yeah, well, Alicia, it was really interesting listening to this Sunday morning talk show tour from Mike Waltz. He delivered a lot of the same messaging that we saw Secretary of Defense Hegseth say on the Hill at that hearing last week, where he was asking for $67 billion, but at the same time saying, no, we have everything we need for this war, and we're not worried about our stockpiles being depleted, and that, yes, if there's any concern, it has to do with the fact that we've been giving weapons and munitions to Ukraine since 2022, and that that this is all Joe Biden's fault for not investing in the military. But the reality is those first 39 days of this war in Iran that Peter was talking about back in February, we actually went through about 50% of our stockpile when we're talking about Patriots and THAADs, and 30% of our stockpile when we're talking about Tomahawks. And that's just the first 39 days of this war. We're about to hit month 5 of this war tomorrow. And all indications in the reporting that we saw from the New York Times shows that the reason that we didn't see a 14th and 15th consecutive day of CENTCOM-sponsored strikes on Iran is because there are real concerns about the stockpile right now. And there was even NBC News exclusive reporting that said that some U.S. commanders in the region are actually not intercepting Iranian missiles that wouldn't cause any sort of civilian or base damage in the region and just allowing them to fall because they're worried about the number of interceptors. These things take anywhere from 1 to 5 years from order date to delivery date because of complex and technical parts. You can't just snap your fingers and expect to replenish that stockpile to pre-war levels. And even a bigger concern right now is that that's creating what many of my sources are telling me as a window of vulnerability for other parts of the world, since we've moved all of our military assets to the Middle East for the most part, and we're very much depleting our stockpiles as a result of this constant bombing.
I'm struck, Evelyn Farkas, by something we heard from the ambassador at the beginning of his answer, which is essentially, well, we don't have what we need because of the number of munitions that we were forced to use in Russia's ongoing war with Ukraine, which brings me to this, which is that there has been a question out there of whether Russia could be playing a role in the Iran war. This weekend, you had Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying the answer is yes. He said they've been tracking Russian satellites and that on multiple occasions, when U.S. facilities have come into view of those satellites, Iran has followed up by attacking them. Zelensky called it a clear correlation in just the last hour. You had the president saying, we'll find out if that's true and he'll ask Putin about it. What do you think is actually happening here? And do you think with Zelensky heading to the White House tomorrow that this could end up being a topic of conversation?
Yeah, Alicia, as usual, you're doing a spectacular job connecting the dots because there's an issue of prioritization here. I don't want to downplay, I worked in the Pentagon. I worked on the Hill overseeing the Pentagon. I know that it's important to make sure that our stockpiles are full so that we can deter all of our enemies, potential or actual. And so I don't want to diminish it, but we have priorities, and the priority is to make sure that Russia does not win in Ukraine, because that will embolden the Chinese vis-a-vis Taiwan and elsewhere. And we know that it could certainly embolden others in the Middle East. The Middle East war was, frankly, a war that we chose to take on. And again, yes, we would like Iran to be a democracy and we would like to eliminate the nuclear program, but we didn't have to do it through use of force. And clearly it's not working. So I think all these things are connected. And when President Zelensky meets with President Trump in the White House, he's going to say, you guys should be prioritizing fighting the Russians because that will make it easier for you in Iran. Russia will not be able to help Iran as effectively, and it'll make it easier to deter China. And so it'll be interesting to see what the order is when Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's also on the docket to meet with President Trump, is he going to meet with him before or after Zelensky?
Right. There's so many pressure points here, Charlie. There are the pressure points of our allies who want to see a resolution here. There is the pressure point of the pain that Americans are feeling at the gas pump. And then there is the reality of the upcoming midterms. I want to read some reporting from our colleagues Vaughn Hilliard and Jake Traylor. This piece really jumped out at me. Multiple GOP insiders told MS Now that there is no political desire for Republicans to echo Trump's often volatile and shifting language on the war, nor a demand that lawmakers help sell the Pentagon's shifting strategy. One GOP operative said, if Republican candidates are having an extended debate about Iran, they shouldn't be falling into that Democrat trap. If a candidate lets their race become a referendum on Iran, that's a mistake. Okay, maybe that's great advice. How do you actually avoid that, Charlie?
Well, good question, because, of course, all of these Republican members of Congress are joined at the hip with Donald Trump. I mean, this midterm election will be a referendum on Donald Trump, on his economic policies, on his character, on corruption, on what's happening in Iran. There's simply no way to do that. And with the steps that Trump has taken over the last several days, he's raised that political cost, because we have seen spikes in gas prices, but we have perhaps not seen how high they are going to go. There may be more of a shock coming as the markets begin to realize that, wait, this is not necessarily under control, with the Houthis now involved in all of this, and the prospects for peace, more and more shaky. So, it's great for a political consultant to say that you should be able to run in a midterm election and not talk about Trump's policies, but Trump's policies are going to, be the cloud over every single Republican campaign. And of course, Democrats need to work just as hard in making Donald Trump the centerpiece of their campaigns.